Hello and welcome to the Marky Worthington Comedy Podcast. This is episode 8 and the second part of the Ross Yeoman episode. Had a bunch of good feedback from the first episode, so I hope you guys enjoy this one as much as you did as the last one. And if you're new to the podcast, go back and listen to the last one or any of the other previous episodes. Before we get into it, we've got some upcoming comedy dates. If you listen to this as soon as it comes out, we've got Basement Open Mic tomorrow, which is the 17th of December. Side note as well, for the Basement Open Mic tomorrow, we've got a special guest MC with local legend Greg Kimball. So come on down to that if you want to watch him work his magic on stage, or if you even want to get up or just watch other comedians. Hopefully I'll see you all there. Actually, this week's a big week for comedy. We've got the Civic Pub Christmas event on the 18th on Wednesday at 7:30, and there's still some tickets available for that, but it's often known to sell out, so go and check that one out. And then on the 19th, so on this Thursday, there's the comedy at Lolpole, which is at Polit Bar in Monica. So I'm on that bill, so make sure you come out and check that. There's a whole bunch of other Canberra comedians that'll be there, and the last comedy event for the year, so sending it out with a big show there for everybody. Down there has a massive lineup, so no doubt that'll sell out as well. And aside from that, this is the last episode for the year, so thank you everybody who's been listening this year so far, and looking forward to next year. But until then, enjoy the episode, and thanks for everything this year. Catch you again next year. Cheers. This is the second episode with Ross Yeoman. Thank you for listening to the first episode and tuning into the show for another, for some more chats. How you doing, Ross?
Yeah, good, man. I was just thinking when we're having a quick break. I don't want to harp on the skateboarding analogy, but it's kind of the only other subculture I've entered.
Yep.
You play sports when you're a kid or whatever.
You're liking it to something you know. Yeah.
And I'm curious as to whether this is the same for you. Like, when I'd been skating I did it for about 10 years, and when I was skating, I noticed like about a year or two in, you drive around and you're not seeing like parking lots, and you're not seeing buildings. You're seeing spots that you can skate.
Yeah.
And again, like obviously Greenhorn on the scene, but only 3 or 4 months in, every day I'm just seeing jokes.
Bits, yeah. Dude.
Yeah. Like,
well, I think we spoke about this at the last mic we were at, but I'll explain it for the listeners. I've always thought in bits.
Yeah.
Like, my attention span is too short. Part of the reason these episodes are only half an hour is because that's how long I can edit an episode before I fall asleep. Like, I need to... I mean, it's entertaining. It's riveting stuff. But for some reason, I can't focus for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And my whole life, ever since I can remember, has always been in bits.
Yeah.
Like, I'll go back to when I was a toddler. Like, even my parents would say, I'd start doing something and then start something else, and then I'd have 14, 15 half-finished things. And that's why I like doing comedy, because you can get through a bit and move on to the next. So my life has always been in bits.
Yeah.
And because that's how long my attention lasts for.
So you kind of always seen the world in that frame.
Yeah, and then I just found something that complemented that way of thinking.
Yeah.
And that's why I've really enjoyed doing comedy, because it finally, instead of... In most situations, what you'll try and do is train yourself out of that so-called bad habit. But here it kind of... it adds to my style of comedy. I'll do something, I'll do a callback or something, but I love being able to finish up something and move on to something else. And even if they're just related but a different topic, then I dig that. But it does. Since I've started actually doing comedy though, it's gotten sharper. Like, I've gotten
Yeah.
quicker at boiling down a situation into a stage bit.
Yeah.
Or you'll see something happen and you'll be like, oh, that reminds me of this bit, which I didn't write down, or I couldn't quite put a punch to it, and now I've got a punchline, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Did you grow up with ADD? I grew up with ADD.
Man, this is the thing. I grew up with it, but I wasn't diagnosed.
Yeah.
I wasn't treated. I was diagnosed, but I wasn't treated.
Same.
So when I went to school, they were just like, well, you know, he's got this new thing we found out called ADD, and you can either give him medication or nothing. So instead of using medication to treat it, over the years I've developed my own like coping mechanisms out of pure necessity. Because in school, if I didn't focus, I would just get bad marks and be shit.
Yeah, and like so, like I mean, I was always the class clown. You know, I was always acting up at school.
That was me, man.
You know,
always having to stay back, always having to get sent to the detention room.
Yeah, I got suspended so many times. I got expelled from that school.
See, that's the difference. I knew the limit. Like, I would never got suspended or expelled. I would get up to the point of getting told to leave the classroom, and then I was just really good at shit talking my way back into it.
Yeah.
And I'd leave it for like a little while, and before I started playing up again, like I kind of knew the cooling off.
Yeah, no. So for me, it was the absolute opposite. It was like once I had a rise out of the teacher, that was the starting block.
Yeah,
where it was like, all right, now
that was the end goal for me. See, that's the difference.
Yeah, no, for me that was like, all right, now I can actually start, you know, poking the bear kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think I've probably got, you know, adult ADD or whatever it is. Like, you know, always fidgety, you know, do this, do that. I always need to be doing multiple things. But yeah, like throughout school, like I think a lot of people that, you know, try their hand at stand-up comedy were the class clowns. They were the funny guy at the pub telling pub stories or whatever else. And then eventually they go, oh, I'll give it a crack. Like, you know, and most of, you know, again, I'm saying this like I'm a veteran, but it's like most of us, if I can use that word, you know, we sort of probably grew up watching stand-ups and loving them and reciting their bits and looking at the timing and, you know, all that kind of thing. We were just fascinated by it.
You learn that subconsciously as well. I learned storytelling from listening to my dad tell stories.
Yeah.
So by the time I got old enough to sort of get attention from people and tell a story, because, you know, like while you're a kid, there's that point in your life where no one really listens to your stories. They're just kind of like, that's just a kid talking, and you demand as much attention as you wanted, but you never get it.
Yeah, it's the Cat Stevens lyrics, from the moment I could talk, I was ordered to listen. And it just doesn't work with people who actually have something they want to say, or, you know, whatever it is. And you know, the schooling system, like my mother's been a teacher for 30 plus years, and so is my auntie and all the rest of it. Nothing but respect for teachers, like the most undervalued, like next to nurses. It's like, you know, we got to reevaluate our priorities. But I mean, they could see it in me and be like, you know, a classroom is not, you know, the best operating system for him, sort of thing. And so I think that bought me a little bit of leeway in terms of how frequently I was getting suspended. And but that was happening at this Catholic school, you know, and my brother, he's 4 years older than me, he used to always he was in public school the whole time, right? Yeah. And he used to always tell me, he was like, you don't know how to talk to people in, you know, positions of authority. Like, this is why you're always getting in trouble, like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then when I switched from the private Catholic school to the public school, I was like, no, the reason I was getting in trouble was because the rules are so different. Like, in the public school, I remember, like, you know, I didn't get into fights or deal drugs or do anything like that. At the Catholic school, I was just a smart ass. Like, I was just annoying and just put myself on their radar. And then when I went to the public school, first week I was there, I overheard these kids bitching about the fact that the music teacher had stolen their weed.
Yeah,
It was like, if you were at my old school, like, you'd be
That'd have been the
expelled
end
for
of it.
that.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like, that's it. You're out, kind of thing. But in terms of, like, you know, starting to do stand up and just constantly seeing jokes. I don't know how to turn this into a bit, and I'm probably not going to now because I'm saying it on the podcast. But
who cares?
Yeah,
Give them something to listen to. Like, they hear it. You hear it first on this podcast, and then go out and watch him turn it into a bit.
Well, I haven't really given it too much thought about how I do it. I just tell the actual story because it's so fucking hilarious to me, at least. And like, you know, skating and seeing spots, and like, that's a great, you know, spot. I could turn that into a great afternoon of skating. And then just seeing things like in the office, or seeing things like interactions in like the bus interchange, which has just become a rat's nest in Canberra. But, you know, you just see things and you're just like, fuck, that is so funny. And I was thinking about it the other night, and it's because essentially, like, and this is where I'm switching between greenhorn to like assuming I know anything about this, but in my humble opinion, like, comedy is obviously, it's a reflection of real life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a dressed up, tweaked version of actual life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But the source material is always real life and what's happened and actual events, whether they're, you know, big media events or whether they're small things that happen in a relationship with your missus, or, you know, whatever it might be. But the other day, I was and I can't hold my tongue, which is bad socially, but I was at the bus stop, and there was this guy speed walking, right? And it's like, that's already funny, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because of the way they're moving, right? And what made it funnier was he wasn't 65. He was like 25. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was young, fit, like, you know, all the rest of it, and speed walking, right? And he's coming up the bike path, and he gets to the road, and he has to cross the road, and he's not going to break his pace, like, he's doing his speed walking exercise or whatever. Probably got a Fitbit on or some shit. And he gets up to the road, and a car pulls around the corner, and instead of breaking into a run, he sped up his speed walk. It was the funniest thing I've fucking ever seen. And I was at the bus stop, and I was probably only about, like, 10 metres from him, and I just burst out laughing. And it's like, I caught myself after I'd laughed, and I was like, oh, that was a bit of a cunt thing to do or whatever else. He obviously heard it. Like, there's no way he didn't hear it. But just watching him do that and make the mental decision of, I'm not going to run, I'm just going to quicken this already ridiculous way of walking. Like, and his arms started moving quicker than his legs, and I was just like, fuck me. Like, and so I feel like, you know, I have no, you know, misconceptions about, you know, becoming the next Bill Burr or anything like that, but I feel like just looking around at life, it is a bottomless pit of comedy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially, well, dude, it depends on your style of comedy. For example, mine and yours as well, the style of comedy that we do is fairly observational humour based.
Mm.
So,
but when you say that now, people think of Seinfeld, and they think you're going to go, what's the deal?
Yeah, what's the speed walking?
Yeah.
It's like, you've got somewhere to go, but you don't want to run. Yeah, it's... I mean, why can't you run? Is there some sort of running police? See, that's how easy it is to try and make
Dress
fun
it
of
up.
that
Yeah.
style, yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about when I say observational humour is, I mean, I'm giving everybody else, and I actually wrote this in one of my blurbs for like a support that I did or something like that. But basically how I explain my style of comedy is I'm giving you an insight into my active imagination.
Yeah.
So I'm showing you a day-to-day situation where myself and the audience member may have seen.
Yeah.
They didn't pull something out of that, but I found the joke in it.
Mm.
And then I related it back to something else. Or sometimes it's just a matter of making people realise how ridiculous some of the things that we do are.
Yeah.
And just putting like a pause and like just like an evaluation on some of the things we do, and then making you realize how ridiculous it is that we do that.
Yeah, I mean, and like, you know, talking about, you know, before you start doing stand-up, you've usually got bits and stuff like that. Like,
Yep.
the bit I do about working in an office and having a split brain where, you know, there's the thinking me that, you know, is saying the truth and the speaking me that keeps me out of prison.
Yeah.
Like, it's so true, because I think things at work that if I was to say, like, you know, I'd never work in Canberra again. But, you know, it was one of those instances where it was real life. And
Outside of the comedy scene, you'd never work again.
Well, yeah.
We'll still have you. Like, we'll take all sorts of you.
Yeah, I don't think I'll make much money out of it. But, like, just holding a lift for someone and just those common courtesy things, like, and this is not in the bit that I do, but, like, this happens so frequently, and it bugs the shit out of me. And I want to say this to someone, like, when you try and exit an elevator and someone is trying to enter it, but they don't give you right of way, it's like, I just want to scream in that person's face and just say, like, do you understand how physics work?
Yeah.
I have to stop occupying.
Haven't you seen
space.
the Three Stooges? Like, we can't get out of the door at the same time.
This can't work.
Even the buses, like, it's exit first, then enter.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. And, like, people
You're still trying to find your card and shit.
Yeah, but, you know, like, just the tiniest little things. And
I love how when someone has insufficient funds on their bus card, everyone on the bus wants to see what they look like.
Yeah,
they know the sound.
Yeah.
And everybody on the bus sticks their head into the aisle to watch who, like, and also it's even better when they don't have cash on them or something, and the driver has to tell them, like, like, everyone's there waiting for the driver to make a call whether he's going to let them on or not. It's like, is this coming out of your paycheck or is this person just riding for free?
I know, and it's like, what does the bus driver care? And it like, that is something that genuinely pisses me off, is like a lack of common decency just in society. Like, I remember, like, showing my age, but I remember getting on a bus. It was literally the day that the GST in Australia took effect.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And I was just getting a
You've
bus.
not been driving for that long.
Well, no, I was like 13 or something, right?
Don't get a license, bro. It's a lot more expensive than what you will probably remember.
Dude, for reasons I won't go into, I'm never getting a license. But, no, I was like 13. I was just going into the city, and I got on the bus, and it was $1 at the time, like, to pay for a bus ticket. You didn't have electronic cards or anything like that. And so I get on the bus and I give him $1, and he's like, the GST's kicked in. And so I checked my wallet, and I actually had another 10 cents. And I was like, well, here you go. And he goes, no, it's 120. And I was like, I was young, but I was like, I know what 10% is. Do you know what I mean? And he didn't let me on the bus. And I had to wait for the next bus and try it again. And the guy was like, yeah, no dramas, mate.
Come on,
Really?
Man.
Really? Is it like, is this going into your coffers? Like, the fuck do you care?
Yeah, exactly.
It just boggles the mind. Like,
Man, I haven't been in Canberra for like as long back as GST. But when I first moved to Canberra, there was $1 tickets, but it was for concession only.
Oh, okay.
And I remember, this is back when I was still a student, you know, struggling, just living at my auntie's place, you know. Let's be honest, I was never struggling. I was just always, like, fairly tight with money, like, especially because I actually earned it. Like, I had a job when I was 14, working at Woolies, and, like, when I first started, man, I was on $6.50 an hour. So when you earn your money,
dude, my first pay, the legal age in Canberra to work at the time was 14 9 months.
Yep.
So I applied to work at McDonald's 2 months in advance so that they knew I was eager and, like, you know, so it looked like I was, you know, good footing or whatever. And my wage was per hour. It was $5.09.
Yeah.
Because you worked 5-hour things, so they could save that 5 cents. Like,
Yeah.
that's how down to the dollar McDonald's is.
Yeah.
Like, fuck them. It was unbelievable. And then I learned, like, a couple of years ago that they do regional pricing.
Yeah, right. So it's different in different places.
Yeah, and so
the definition of regional pricing for anyone that doesn't know.
But what they do is they hike up their prices in lower socioeconomic communities.
Yeah.
Because people are more likely to
Low social security back payment?
No, in low socioeconomic communities. So like
call back to Kai Fei's Thinking Man's Bogan. Make sure you see that live.
But yeah, so basically the poorer the community, the higher the price of McDonald's is because they think you're going to buy McDonald's more frequently.
Yep.
Like they're that grubby.
Yeah, dude. It's so that's kind of, so I worked at Woolies, and what happened was I was just on the age limit when I started the I did like a week's work experience there for free
at
Woolworths as part of the school, and then they let me work there. I had a job before that.
They let you work.
Yeah,
they started to fucking pay you.
Yeah. They let me work there for them. Like the cheapest member, they welcomed me with open arms. But yeah. Anyway, so I started there when I was a kid, and when I was younger. And when you earn every dollar down to the cent, you kind of get a little bit more protective of it. And I was always being called the tight ass, and all that sort of stuff. But it was just like, man, it's because I earned this money. Like I earned it, and I remember I was on like, whatever youth allowance or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had to go to the Belconnen Centrelink to get my thing sorted because I needed to fill out some paperwork that I couldn't do online.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, I'll catch a bus into Belconnen from where I was living in Kaleen at the time. But I didn't, because they hadn't paid me. I didn't have any, like... I didn't have I didn't have the card.
Yeah.
And I only had $1.
Yeah.
Literally $1 in cash. So I went there and he's like, well, I can only give you a one-trip pass, a one-off ticket for $1. There's normally 3 or whatever. So I didn't have that 90-minute transfer. But I'm like, all I need to do is get to Belco. So I'll give you $1 to get there. And then once I'm there, I'll be able to sort it out to get back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I, people like you impress me. I've never had any respect for money, and that's why I don't have anyone. That's a Freudian slip right there. Why I don't have anyone? Why I don't have any money? It's one in one hand out the other for me. Like I'll acknowledge that I have a certain level of privilege, but not exorbitantly. Like I don't have rich parents or any shit like that. And I did start working literally the day it was legally allowed for me to do it. But no, when it comes to money, I'm just useless. Like,
dude, you should have tried to convince them to pay you like the adult wage because you done a phone interview and your voice, they would have thought that you're like old enough.
Oh yeah. So I told you that because so
people listening to the podcast,
for the listeners. So I had an operation on my vocal cords.
Yeah.
When I was
What's that from? Like what?
10.
Just a genetic thing, or
no. I had some sort of nodule growth.
Yeah.
And so they had to cut it out because if it connected to the other vocal cords, it'd seize up.
Yeah.
So I had to have surgery and stuff, and for 2 weeks after it, I had these stacks of post-it notes that I had to write down stuff because I wasn't allowed to talk for 2 weeks. And it was probably the best 2 weeks of my parents' life that I could not speak. Do you know what I mean?
How old were you?
So I was 10.
Yeah.
And so I've basically sounded like I do now since I was 10.
Yeah, right.
And so I never went through that period of like...
How was it before the surgery? Was your voice just like a normal 10-year-old?
Yeah, I sounded like a prepubescent kid. And then I came out of the surgery and I was like...
So after
Marlon
that
Brando.
week, or the couple of weeks of not talking,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you ditched the post-it notes and just had the Tom Waits voice.
Oh yeah, but it was worse. Like, so it was worse when I was in... When I left the Catholic school and I went to public school, they all started calling me the Godfather, because at the time it was still really raspy. So I was kind of like, it was like I had a smoker's cough, but I was 14.
Yeah.
And so I used to cop shit all the time, and call me the Godfather, and I hadn't even seen the Godfather. I didn't get the joke.
Yeah.
But my old man, he, I won't go into any specifics, but he would occasionally he was a very senior executive with like Channel 10, and he ran SBS and that kind of thing. So every now and then you get a call back in the day of landlines, right? And it'd be a work call, and they'd say, "Oh, hi, Peter." Like, I'd just answer it and say hello, and they'd say, "Oh, hi, Peter," and they'd start talking. So I'd just play along, and I'd play along and talk to them. But obviously, like, I'm 11 and I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. and so it was like, eventually get to a point in the conversation where they'd ask me like a pointed question, and I'd be like, I'm just, it was like Bart in The Simpsons. I was like, "I'm going to level with you. I'm 11 years old and I'm going to go get my dad.
I'll just get him now for you."
But then because it would be when he was running SBS, I used to...
The awkward part where, like, they think that it's just the worst assistant ever. Like,
But when he was running SBS, I actually had his direct office number.
Yeah.
And so I used to call him. And obviously he knows his own son's voice, but I could just tweak it a little bit or whatever else. And I think the best I got out of him was, I'm not going to lie, it was probably about 40 seconds before he was like, "Ross, is this you?" Like, but yeah, I used to prank call him all the time, pretending that I was like some really disgruntled employee, or whatever it was. I'd write these scripts, and but yeah, no, that was heaps of fun.
Yeah, man. No, that's good. We've covered off a fair bit in the first half. I know that before we wrap up, we'll just touch on a couple of gigs that we've had around the place since you've started. We're both in on the Short, Fast, Funny. I did, I think, just over the 3 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
How did you find that gig, man? Is that your first big like stage sort of show, or?
Yeah, well, see, I didn't even know that was what was happening.
Yeah.
So I just saw it, like, it's the ADD. Like, I saw it and I was like, okay, Short, Fast, Funny. And in my mind, I was like, all right, I can only do 3 minutes, so I got to tighten up. And that's what I thought about. I was like, I just clicked going on Facebook. Yeah. And set it in my phone, and I was like, all right, I'm good to go. I just need to cut it down to 3 minutes. No idea that was going to be filmed. No idea there was going to be cameras and all that sort of bullshit. And I remember walking in there and walking straight up to you and going, "Marky, what the fuck is going on? Why are the cameras and everything?" And it was, what was it, CIT we're filming?
Yeah, the film crew at CIT.
Yeah, I assume it's like, they for some course of filming and then editing. Or,
just to practice doing it, I
guess. And I'd recorded my thing and got it down to like 3 minutes 20 seconds on the dot. A couple of times, like 3 or 4 times, and I was like, all right, I'm fairly comfortable with this. And I remember when I walked up to you and I was like, what's with the cameras? And you said to me like, oh, they kind of want us to play clean. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I can't, there's no way I'm doing that. Like, I have this down to 3 minutes 20 seconds. I'm not going to change it. and I figured, fuck it, like, they can not use it. I didn't even
just do your thing.
Yeah, well, it was also like I don't recall signing up to this, and it's like I don't care because I name dropped the school and stuff like that. There's no way they'll ever use that, and that I don't care. But I remember even in like there was that little backstage bit where you with the MC, when you're getting ready to get called up or whatever else. And I remember like one of the, you can swear on this, yeah?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. I remember one of the punchlines was me calling someone a cunt. And I remember being backstage like 30 seconds before I was going to get called up and saying, I could do that stupid trick of going, he was a real country music fan.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was just like, no, fuck this. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, have you...
Dude,
have you had that? Like, because
I've had a couple. I've had a couple where I've had to like clean it up a little bit. But to be honest, man, you played the right game. Like, if the whole reason that you want to record anything is just so that you can have an accurate representation of yourself. And if you change your act for someone else, then it's not going to be an accurate representation of yourself. I've had to clean up for certain gigs before. Yeah. The good thing is I've got enough material, I can just take out the ones that aren't as clean, and I still have things. But being new yourself, you
I don't have anything clean.
So you may as well just... and even if you don't, even if you've been doing it for years, if you don't have anything clean, man, at the end of the day, they're going to send you the video... Even if they don't use it for their usage, you can use it for yours because it's your content and your material. So, like, I honestly think it's always better, and I get this a lot with some open mics. If the crowd's a little bit standoffy, some people change their act to suit the crowd, and I find that a lot of the time that's not the best way to go. You're better off doing what you know and what you can do, and just smashing it out. And if the crowd doesn't dig it, then it just wasn't your crowd, but it was your material. So,
well, yeah, I mean, and like again, like Greenhorn, it's like not like I have any real experience to speak from, but in terms of the stuff that I say, like I mean, I've done like the incident that we spoke about that created a rift between one club and one comic.
Yeah.
And that joke was completely innocuous, in my opinion. It was actually very progressive.
Yeah.
And I have done my ender about jerking off in the shower at that venue 3 times. And that is so much more offensive. Like, that is so far on the nose. So it's weird to me that, some things fly, some things don't, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, obviously, Greenhorn 3 months in or whatever it is, but there's no way I'm going to change anything because I'm just saying something I think is funny. And if you don't think it's funny, you don't have to laugh. And you're not paying to see me, so, I hope you have a good night.
Yeah, man, it all just comes down to what you do and whether it's someone's thing or not. But like I said, man, it's always good to just stick to your guns and do what you're comfortable with and do what you're confident doing on stage. And so far, man, I think you've been nailing it. So it's good to
thanks, man.
Good to get through what we've been doing, and I'm keen to do some more work around town with you. At all the mics that we've been at.
Yeah, man, dude, it has been so much fun. Like, people have been like, oh, yeah, that must be the hardest thing in the world. It's not. It's so rewarding, like getting that laugh, and
if you're into it, it's fun. Like if you like what you're doing, then you enjoy doing it.
Yeah. And I love coming to the open mics because I love seeing the other comedians. I don't just rock up, do my set, and then leave. It's like I really enjoy just sitting in a room and like there's nothing better in life than just laughing.
Yeah,
like
having fun.
Like, and so if you can create that for someone else, and someone else can create that for me, fucking that's a good night out as far as I'm concerned.
Man, it's fun. It's fun for everybody, and as long as I'm having fun and people are enjoying it, I'll keep fucking doing it. So
yeah, definitely.
Good, man. Well, that wraps up this episode, and
dude, absolute honour. Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to get all sides of the scene, man, and had fun recording the episode and going a bit deeper on some of the comedy scene. So yeah, good to and hopefully the fans get to know you a little bit more, and it adds a bit more depth to watching you on stage because they know a bit more about where it all comes from.
Yeah. I mean, it's that's a side benefit. Good times, but I'm honestly just stoked that you actually had me on. I remember approaching you about it, get a greenhorn, and stoked, man.
Cheers, man. Well, anyway, we'll stick around now and have the basement open mic and call it a day after that, man. So thanks for being on, and thanks for everyone else for listening to the episode. And catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Cheers.